Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at the penultimate session on the first day in the Innovation Zone. So far this afternoon, you've had a deep dive into out-of-home and luxury brands, into AI and voice activation, and into social media. So what have we not discussed in this room, which was one of the key topics you, the audience, wanted to see on stage this year? Well, of course, it is TV and real-time engagement. So we have an amazing lineup of panelists to take you through all of the things you need to know around TV real-time engagement. But to lead that panel, we have someone very special, who is Juan Vallejo, who is the EVP for Commercial Partnerships at Fox. Take it away for us, Juan.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be here. So today we're here to discuss TV real-time engagement, how we're leveraging technology to maximize marketing outcomes. And like my host said, my name is Juan Vallejo. I'm the head of commercial partnerships for Fox in Latin America. Very excited to be here. This has been a project that's near and dear to our hearts. It's been 2 years in the making, and it's really a passion project that today it is a reality in the Engagement Optimizer. Before I start, I want to start by thanking the Festival of Media for having us here today to talk about this project. And of course, thank all of you for being here and our partners throughout the years. So as you know, the industry is in constant evolution. What we see is a proliferation of new platforms coming out every day. New technologies really popping out everywhere. And of course, this makes for a more fragmented and complex audience and consumer. Now, the big challenge for all of us in the industry is the fact that with more technology and more platform, what's happening is that we need more metrics. But the problem is we continue measuring with the same old metrics. It's demographic and reach, which is not really a proxy for marketing outcomes. And it's not really measuring emotion and engagement. So what we see at Fox is really to redefine the television. Television being an ecosystem of experience and, of course, capturing the emotions of fans. Folks, we're not in the ad business. We're in the engagement business. As an old boss used to tell me, don't count the people you reach the people that really count. And that's what we try to do at Fox, is to disrupt disruptors, which is our mantra. In other words, if we're not cannibalizing ourselves, somebody else will. And so if it has to be by advocating of creating new systems, and we have to destroy others, so be it. And we want to transform this industry. But the truth is, we can't do it alone. So we've embarked on this amazing journey with some amazing partners in technology, educational institutions, in Harvard Business School and UC Berkeley, helping us with econometrics, research, methodology, et cetera. And of course, our measurement partners in Cantor Media. And of course, I see a lot of competitors here, which I actually call frenemies, friends and enemies. We want to invite you in this journey. I was just talking to somebody from Turner before, and we want to invite you all in this journey so we can continue making this as a metric. So with that being said, here's my speakers today. I'm honored to be sharing the stage with you guys. Felix Oberholzer-Guy, he's the chair of the MBA program at Harvard Business School. He's been with us for 2 years, really working really hard to challenge the status quo and changing this new metric. We have Jimena Urquijo, who's the director of Biz Dev and Insights for Cantor Media. And my partner in crime, Daniela Novik, who's the mother of this project. So please help me and welcome Daniela to start us off with this new project.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy. It's working? Yeah. Happy to be here and see so many familiar faces, so thank you. So as Juan was saying, for us, it is key to be consumer-centric. We need to start with the consumer. And our objective as content provider is to be relevant and create that emotional connection with them. That's why we think that engagement is key. But to be honest with you, everyone is talking about engagement, but there is no one clear definition in the media field. For me, it's time spent. For Facebook, it's shares and likes, but it's not one single view. But the good news is that coming from the psychological field, we have a very clear definition of engagement, which means attention, involvement, positive emotion, and the identification with the stimulus. That could be a person or a content. Also, engagement, in this sense, can help us to predict behaviors. And the good news is that can be measured by using HRV, which means heart rate variability. But to talk about this, I'd like to introduce Professor Felix.
Thank you, Daniela. So this is the way we measure heart rate variability engagement in this particular study. Think of your heartbeat. I hope your heart beats while we're presenting here. And think about the time that passes from one beat to the next. Turns out, psychologically speaking, that time, and in particular variation in that time, is a fabulous metric that captures engagement. Imagine you're watching television, something really interesting happens, your heart starts to beat faster. What's going to happen? Oh, the time spent between two heartbeats is going to shrink. But then, similarly, you relax. Oh, it wasn't quite as dangerous as you expected. And as you relax, the time between two heartbeats is going to go up. So we measure this variability in the time between two heartbeats, and that's a fabulous psychological predictor for the level of engagement. It's obviously radically different from the way we measure engagement elsewhere in digital. Think of likes, shares, nothing physiological. The standard metric in the industry for viewability of videos, 2 seconds. I promise you, nothing happens physiologically in 2 seconds. What we're interested in is the core of engagement, the core of how people experience brands. And that's why we use heart rate variability in this particular project.
So in this sense, engagement has never been measured outside a lab, because to measure HRV, you need to be connected to an electrocardiogram. So it's really hard to take those equipment to your house. So in order to do that, Felix found a company that is based in California that they developed these bands that looks like a Fitbit, but they are used to track outpatients from medical centers. So one of the variables that can capture is HRV. So we partnered with them. We went to Harvard Lab. We exposed 100 subjects to different content and commercials, and we measured them both ways, with the electrocardiogram and with the Fitbit. And the good news is that we were able to find a positive correlation. So this allowed us for the first time, at least as we know, to be in people's home measuring engagement in real time. So this is a great news for us and allow us to understand how people connect with real context, because the reality is that the medical facility is not the real context where people connect with our content or commercials. So this is how we came out with this Fox Engagement Optimizer, which at the end of the day is a tool that allows us to measure in real time audience engagement. So because we were able to find this wristband, it was time for us to go to the field and do the real work. So we went to Mexico City. With Cantor, we recruited 800 cases in the city. Believe me, this was really, really hard. We asked the participants just to wear the wristband, but they didn't do anything else. They just watched TV the usual way. They just watched the channel that they usually watch at the time that they usually watch TV. So there was no any other intention from our side, but just understanding the engagement that they have when they are connected with all the content. So we have them for 5 weeks, 24/7, which means if somebody was watching TV at 2 a.m., we were able to capture that data. And as I said, for the real time, in a real context. Something that also it's important for us to mention is that this band can capture movement. So if somebody walk away from the TV, we realized that, so we were able to remove that data, that noise from the analysis. How we were able to do this? By using technology. And actually, this panel is about using technology. We gave each participant a smartphone with 3 apps. The first app was the one that was listening what was going on the TV screen. It's called ACR technology. We have our partner here. The other app is the app that was controlling the wristband through Bluetooth. So we knew second by second what was the level of engagement for each second of content. And the last app was the one provided by Cantor. That was a push-up survey app that allowed us to track brand recall and brand awareness through the whole study. I know this seems quite easy from a PowerPoint slide, but it was not easy at all, believe me. I think we didn't sleep for the whole study. I keep remembering the face of the head of IT at Fox when I asked him for 800 fonts. He looked at me like, 800 smartphone for research. Like, what are you going to do? You are going to resell them. Like, he didn't understand the request. But to make the long story short, we ended up with my team driving all around the city, trying to collect from one Palacio de Hierro to the other one, which is a retail store, to collect 800 phones, because there was no vendor able to give us that amount of phones. So it was a big challenge, but we were able to accomplish what we were looking for, and now Felix is going to talk about the results.
Thank you, Daniela. So I start with differences in the level of engagement, always measured as heart rate variability across programming content. On average, heart rate variability is about 60. So this is 60 milliseconds between two heartbeats. But it varies in sort of intuitive, predictable ways between different types of content. Not surprisingly, sports is number one. And it was actually interesting in Mexican TV, there's two channels that mostly show sports, Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. When I first saw the data, I remember calling Daniela and said, oh, there's something wrong with the data. It doesn't really make sense. There's much more engagement on Fox Sports 2 than on the first channel, which, coming from North America, didn't really make much sense to me. She says, no. The second channel has the local games. And so what you see is literally the moment people see their own team, the moment people see the team that they care for, levels of engagement quite unlike what you would see if you watch, I don't know, Barcelona or some other boring team play. And then, of course, from sports, it's downhill, factual, not quite as engaging. The two things that are most interesting here is there are differences, but the differences aren't dramatic, aren't really all that big. To give you a sense of the data, one standard deviation in heart rate variability is about 30 points. So this is much less than a standard deviation difference. And then I think the good news, or the most interesting news here, is engagement during commercials, actually quite okay. And there's this narrative out there, the moment a commercial comes on, people walk away and they go to the restroom, get beer, whatever it is that you do during the commercials. Not in our sample, not in our study. The vast majority of the people stay in front of the TV, and their heart rate variability quite comparable. Here's what it looks like for commercials. All the way from travel, super engaging, to that same cell phone commercial that you've seen 50,000 times, and that wasn't that interesting to begin with. Not levels of engagement that aren't quite high. Notice that the differences are much bigger here, so the quality of your creative really matters. In part, of course, this comes from an observation that when we choose programming content, we select the ones that we really liked, and so levels of engagement tend to be quite similar, while no one that I know at least chooses a particular show for the commercials that are going to be shown, and as a result, you get these much bigger differences also. Now, one of the key questions of interest in the study is this engagement measured as heart rate variability, is that really something new? Or by looking at reach and by looking at demographics, can I approximate what the study essentially tells us? This is obviously really important because if reach is a good proxy for engagement, there's no reason to worry about engagement. Just look at the reach number and it's going to tell you whether or not you should care. What we find is that reach really is different from engagement really is different from reach and demographics. And in particular, the two are completely uncorrelated. So you have on the vertical axis, you have level of engagement, heart rate variability. On the horizontal axis, you have reach. There is no regression line that you can draw through the data. Or you could, but it would be basically not meaningful. And the same is true if you look at the correlation between engagement and TV ratings. So we all say we care about engagement, and yet the data that we have and that we make big economic decisions on tells you nothing at all about the level of engagement. In fact, if you look across shows, it's very easy for me to give you an example of a show where people are really engaged and the audience is small. And I can show you shows where the audience is really dramatically large and yet levels of engagement are so-so. And everything in between. That is, as an industry, as brand managers, we need to start thinking about reach, demographic, and engagement as three separate, quite different dimensions. Here, I'm showing you this show by show, but even that's not really quite the right metric. The Simpsons, as you might imagine, is quite engaging to begin with, but look at the difference between an average episode of The Simpsons and the very best episode that we had in the data. That's a 2 standard deviation difference. Basically, your heart rate variability doubles if you go from an average episode to the very best episode. So what we need to start thinking about is an opportunity to target particular commercial messages with particular programming content. That opportunity is tremendous. That opportunity is really big. One thing that I find interesting is that when I speak to experts in the industry, there are 2 dominant intuitions, if you will, about how to best match creative and programming content. And one intuition says, if you have a show that, say, take American football as an example, that is really aggressive, that is really fast, what you need to do is you need to have creative that matches the emotional content. Because you can't have it that you see a very engaging, a very fast-paced, a very aggressive show, and then you show some, humdrum commercial. Doritos is a great example. They believe in this emotional matching theory.
Feeling like I'm running and I'm feeling like I gotta get away. Better know that I don't and I won't ever stop, cause you know I gotta win every day. See, they really wanna pop me. Just know that you will never flop me. And I know that I gotta be a little cocky. You ain't never gonna stop me. Every time I come in, then I gotta set it, then I gotta go, and then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow, and then I gotta shut it. Any little thing, and then I can get it be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna dead it. Doritos Blaze, a bold new flavor that brings the heat.
And then there's a second theory. And the second theory is the exact opposite. And it's based on biology also. Our bodies actually don't like that feeling of being on edge all the time. So the idea is I show you aggressive programming content, and then I'll let you relax. And I'll let you calm down. And that experience of relaxation, that will feel very good to you because your body was on edge for too long to begin with. And so we pair this emotion with a calm commercial, with a commercial that we remember as being relaxing.
Well, you only need the light when it's burning low. Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you love her when you let her go. Only hate the road when you're missing home. Only know you love her when you let her go. And you let her go.
So if you place these 2 commercials in a Super Bowl, which one would do better? Our data say Doritos gets it exactly right. You got to match the emotional content of the programming to the emotional content of the advertising. Relaxation might feel good to us, but it's not nearly as effective as aggressive matching. So here's the carryover effect from watching a particular type of programming to seeing a particular type of commercial. And the great news is if your creative lives in exactly the right environment, it's going to be far more effective, irrespective of whether the creative was fabulous to begin with or so-so. That is, it's not only the quality of the creative, which we saw in the first sample, when we looked at the first data, but it's also the matching of creative and programming content that is really important. Now, of course, in the end, what we really care about, how does all of this spill over into marketing outcomes that are of relevance? And here we looked at self-reported data for the time being, and we asked 3 types of questions. How much did you like the show, and how did that influence brand recall, how your stated likelihood of purchase? How much did you like the commercial, and how did that carry over? And then finally, what was your level of engagement during programming, and how did that carry over? And what you see is that the small line that is hardly visible, that is the increase in the likelihood, in the stated likelihood of purchase as a result of liking the spot. It matters a little bit, but not that much. Whether or not you like the show, that matters much more. It's about 2 percentage points in our data. And then look at the effect of heart rate variability engagement. There's nothing quite like it. So the pathways that we identify are really 3. You like the commercial better. That has a positive outcome. It's not all that big. If you like the show better, engagement during the show, that has an indirect effect because the engagement during the show will influence engagement during the commercial, which in turn will increase the stated likelihood of purchase. And then liking the show, the programming environment is just really, really much more important compared to everything we knew before we did this particular type of study. So where does that leave us? What can we do with this type of research approach? The first one is if you have a sample of creative work that you consider for your campaigns, we can tell you which pieces are engaging, which pieces are not engaging. We don't need to build an expensive medical lab. We can actually do this with technology that is now becoming more prominent in the medical fields. I have no doubt that 2 or 3 years from now, everyone here will wear some sort of a wristband that is precise enough that it can measure heart rate variability. So we're really on the verge of a breakthrough of getting real-time information from consumers, physiological data that cannot be manipulated in a quantity and a quality that we have never had before. Second, you might think about re-optimizing the value of your campaign. So for instance, if you bought reach exclusively, you might buy reach and engagement at one and the same time. Cream on top, if you will. Or maybe even more interesting, you might, if you bought reach at great expense, you might re-optimize and think, oh, can I actually live with a smaller audience? Not so great, but an audience that is far more engaged and far more likely to remember the commercial messages that you have shown. Okay? What all of this means for the future collaboration between organizations, we will hear from Jimena.
Thank you, Felix. So why did Cantor get involved in this project? And what were some of the key learnings? We absolutely share the belief with Fox that there is a need for an engagement metric. Also, we are the data measurement company. We are the ones that we refer to as the reach and providing this single currency. What did we learn through this project? And what were some of the key learnings in terms of, we have over 50 pages of learnings from the first project in Mexico. And we'll go over that. But before I go into what our expertise and the reasons why, and what our vision is, and the reasons why we work together, we have a study globally that analyzes the 5 top global ad expenditure markets. And it's called Dimension. And it looks at Brazil, UK, Japan, the United States, China. And 2 key questions. One of the questions is, what do you want in advertisement? And 64% of the connected consumers answer, we want relevant, interesting ads. Now, only 40% believe they have seen an increase in relevant, interesting, contextual ads in the last 12 months. So there is a gap here. And the Fox Engagement Optimizer is there to fill this gap, to actually start providing commercials within the right context to the right audience. We absolutely believe in what Juan said and Felix and Daniela referred to. Yes, the consumer is changing. They want personalization. The ad media market is very fragmented, and it's seemingly almost impossible to answer all the right fundamental marketing questions. And a single metric is not going to work, right? And we're the providers of a single currency. It's not going to work to address everyone's business question. So our vision within working with Fox and the Harvard Business School and many other collaborators really in this project is that there won't be a single currency metric in the future for us. The future is made out of multiple proprietary metrics with a currency standard. because we need to address every company's business issues. And what we mean by currency standard is they will have a currency grade status, and it will be to the highest quality standard for each proprietary metric. Why? Because we have too many business issues to address, and a single currency cannot address those. So what is the future for those metrics? You have one option, it's remain proprietary and use this as Fox Engagement Optimizer for Fox. Or the other option is to syndicate it and make it scalable. So that's the vision. Proprietary metrics, currency standard, scalable, or proprietary. So talking within this scope, so fragmented market, holistic view of the consumer, and everyone that Felix and Daniela have been discussing, there's one fundamental. The consumer, yes, it's changing, but the fundamentals of marketing have not changed. And we call this within Cantor the ABC of marketing. You have to know your audience, and this has been transparent in every single presentation today. You have to study their relationship with the brands, which is B, and you have C, invest wisely to optimize conversion. Know your audience, the relationship, and then the ROI. So within the scope of the ABC of marketing, which really has not changed, we, in the Mexico project, what did we do? So as we made reference earlier, we had a 6 p.m. Conference call every day for 6 weeks to go over the 800 people that we were actually following. We had to go in Mexico City and recruit 800 people willing to participate in this project. So imagine yourself on your couch, a maximum of 20 feet with your television set. You have to have Daniela's bracelet. You have to have your smartphone. You have to have 3 apps. Your Wi-Fi has to be working. Okay, so we know how Wi-Fi works in Latin America. And all of this needs to be synchronized. In the meantime, and this goes back to the reality and the contextual reality, this is the beauty of this project, because you're in your household and life is happening around you. So the kids are running, the dog is barking, you're having a beer, and you're watching television, and suddenly there is an ad that catches your attention. And that's where you consciously measure the unconscious. So all of this needs to be synchronized, and all of this needs to be happening. And so Cantor Media, that's what we did. We managed the field work, and we ensured all these respondents were constantly connected 24/7 and answering B of marketing fundamentals, the advertising recall, push-up surveys that they were able to answer every 3 days, where we would ask about brand recall and brand awareness. So in this specific study for Mexico, we addressed the A and the B of the marketing. And I'm going to pass it on to Daniela to discuss the evolution.
Yeah, actually, we realized that we were missing a big piece of the puzzle, which is conversion. So that's why we went back to the field, but this time in Argentina and Brazil. Actually, we are about to finish the field work, hopefully this Wednesday. Yeah. But in this case, we recruited 4,400 cases in Buenos Aires and in Sao Paulo. We have them during 4 weeks, 24/7, real context. But this time we added an extra layer, which is the real purchases. We add an extra app, a 4 app, that is able to track their purchases. So then we have the conversion data that was missing from the previous study. So something that I want to mention, and that's something that Jimena was pointing out, is that the reality for us, it's more complex, because we needed to partner with more than 10 companies to make this happen. And it's not easy, because every company has a different way of doing things, different technology. Like, for example, one of the companies here has Google server, the other one has Amazon server, one works on iOS, the other one works on Android. So for us, as a client that tries to connect the dots, it's a big challenge. Also, some other companies are not even listed here, like the custom agency in Argentina. When we tried to import the 400 wristband, they didn't understand why a media company was importing medical equipment. So that took me like 50 conversations with them until they allow us to get the medical stuff into the country. And on top of that, we have a customs strike in Brazil. So, you know, it's not easy to bring technology to the market, and that makes the reality even more complex. So my main takeaway here is you need to be ready to deal with this. You need to be ready to have a great team that is capable of dealing with daily stuff that will appear to you, because there is no manual. You don't have any manual to follow. You are creating the rules in your own way. So that's, for me, a big learning. And it's going to be the new reality.
Yeah.
So to finish with this?
Yes, so well, we do have 50 pages of learning already.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more than 50 pages.
Now we will. So in Brazil and Argentina, we had 3 of the Cantor companies, right? So you had Cantor Brown, which does tracking and field management, Cantor Media, which is the currency, and also the Cantor wall panel that has a mass registry of purchases. So someone goes to the supermarket, comes home, scans all the products they buy. So we now know exactly what products are bought throughout the region. So what we saw, what was different in Mexico versus Argentina and Brazil is in the brand relationship, the people came home and in their smartphone, they were able to scan the products they purchased. So now you were able to make a connection between the product and the ad. And when we look at conversion, and this is key because you will not be closing the loop if you do not know if people are buying and watching the ad within the right context. So what we did here is that now there will be 5 weeks of information of product scanning within Brazil and Argentina. And that information will be modeled through the respondent level data of the Cantor wall panel. So now you'll have to be able to, you'll know your audience in the right context, your ad, your purchases, and be able to connect the data between audience and did they go and purchase the product. And to finish, I would like to pass it on to Felix to explain how this modeling of lookalikes is happening with the Harvard Business School.
So there's going to be 2 levels of results. The first level of result is just telling you, did your campaign work on average? The kinds of analyses that you could have done before that you're all familiar with. And then on top of that, we will be able to say something about the role of engagement in encouraging conversions. Your campaign was a fabulous campaign to begin with. It worked really well for the average consumer. And then once we observed very high engagement, ROI increased by X%. Literally putting a dollar value, a dollar figure to this idea of optimizing the placement of commercials in the programming context.
Yeah, we're running out of time, but I just want to say, I want to finish with this. We do believe that we need a new currency. We call it GERPs, which is gross engagement rating points. But this is just a name. But what we truly believe is that we need to address those 4 milestones. First is hyper-targeting. We need to be able to be relevant to the consumer, and that's the way to go. Then, as media TV companies, we need to be able to do dynamic media plans. We need to catch up with digital. That's a must-have for us. Then also we need to be able to test creativity, and not just because it's nice, but we need to know that it's going to work, it's going to be effective. And last but not least, we need to be able to track conversion. So those 4 milestones are the heart of the Fox Engagement Optimizer. Thank you so much for being here.